Well, oh,
Do that because otherwise I'll forget.
okay. Don't worry. Yeah, we'll give it another minute or so if anybody got any problems, and then we'll get started. I'll do my own recording here, so you will hear a couple of notifications from Jackie. It's recording, and then it's from me. It's recorded. Good turnout this evening. Very nice.
Are you recording okay, Julie?
I'm not recording yet.
Okay, fine.
I'm gonna start when I'll get going then. Are we ready to get going then? Let's get started then. Fantastic. Lovely. Now I'll put my recording on. Yes. It's going to my screen is going to ask you if you can accept me as a second recording person. Excellent. And now it's recording. Hello everyone. My name is Julia Borodina, and today you'll be watching me painting a seascape. And I've got lovely acrylic paints ready for you. And let's have a look at my screen and let's get started. I have a beautiful view which was taken by my friend in the Isle of Skye. Got some gorgeous crashing waves, really beautiful weather coming in, very stormy, gorgeous light, dark rocks. So I'm really excited to show the dynamics of the painting today. Now for the seascape, I tend to pick up a grey background. So it's neutralized, it kind of gives us a neutral background. So instead of white, quite blinding, so my palette is quite a blinding white here. It's much easier to have a little bit more something with a tone on it. So I've got quite a lot of warm color, I've got quite a lot of cool colors, some darks. So gray will be fantastic. So I primed it with acrylic gray, so I just mixed some white and black together. Now on my palette, this is my little sample of the board I'm using. On my palette, I have three cool colors and three warm colors, plus white and black. So my warm colors are ochre, crimson, and violet. And from my cool colors, I've got some emerald green, phthalo blue, and ultramarine. And I'm going to start sketching straight away with a brush. I'm going to use probably some ultramarine and tiny bit of black, so to make an indigo. So I can sketch directly on my gray board. And my sample gray board is a good opportunity to check what the color is going to look like. So that's a nice dark blue. And I'm going to dilute it and start planning my composition. So my horizon line is just a little bit higher than halfway through point. So let's find that. Maybe just even exaggerate it and make it a little bit higher. Let's have a look if I'll work on that way. Now I have a good tool with me today. I have a sponge. So if I were to soak it in and rinse it, I can use it as my rubber, okay, while the colors are still wet. It's also lovely to use it to paint with, especially for some larger scale work. So I'm going to leave it here for the moment, and I'm going to continue sketching. It's going to start reflecting. Once it dries, you will see it better. Right, so my horizon is coming up somewhere here, and then I've got some mountains and some black rocks. So let's start perhaps from the left-hand side rock here. I've got a lovely shape coming in at the front. Yeah, got a lovely, can see some of the ridges of it. You can see the silhouette of it. But it loses its contour at the bottom because the waves are crashing and it's harder to see the exact shape. So I'm going to do an approximate scale. Yeah, approximate line. So it's not going to be much of a line. I'm going to look for the shape for it afterwards. I also going to use a little bit of violet or even crimson and a little bit of black because some of my rocks might have extra coolness. Some of that might have that little extra warmth through the black. So while I'm sketching it out, you can just see a little bit of that violety red color. So let's plan it as a big shape. How far is it going to be? How much of the water is going to be left? How much of the rock is going to be protruding? Maybe somewhere here. Maybe a tiny bit lower. I'm trying to work with quite fluent, big strokes. So I'm not over worried about precise shapes. I want to get the overall structure in before I can maybe make those adjustments or decide, okay, if this rock wants to over hover or kind of go lean towards the left a bit more. Might also plan the directions of light, probably how the rock gets cracked with the weather, with all these segments been produced. Okay, so I'm looking at that form immediately, and it's going to be a little bit broken in the middle and at the top here. So there's a small group is somewhere here. Okay. Okay, and again, I just plan it ahead before I do any other colors, before I do anything else. Maybe I need to move those shapes later. I don't want to spend overly too much drawing it. Just a quick plan. Okay. The direction is good for me because I'm interested in seeing that almost like as an entry point. Probably will have the little glance of light on top of the black rocks and following those waves and then looking at some of the mountains and looking at the waves coming up. So perhaps something here, maybe perhaps it will be coming into here. I think that will be looking like more of a more exciting entrance to a painting. Right, and let's have a look. We also have some smaller shallower rocks right on the border here, and they are just covering the drops of the mountains at the back. Right, so if I were to place now the mountain at the back got quite a symmetrical shape, almost like a perfect symmetry there. That line will show a little bit better as it starts drying. So I might deliberately make it less symmetrical. So maybe I'll drop something a little bit more lower here. Okay, it just looks a little bit better without too much detail. Right, do I want to have that mountain quite tall? How much sky do I want? Maybe I'll just drop it a tiny bit lower. Have it all as a strong shape, but maybe a little bit more shallower. And I also have a distant, maybe a little bit more blue here now. Okay. And the distant in the midst of the clouds and the storm. There will be some of the darkness of the mountain there as well. Okay. Right, now let's have a look now. My distant mountain, where that's finishing, and where the rocks, the closer rocks behind the splash of the wave are going to be. So I need to make sure that they not clashing as well. Actually, quite happy that they're a bit more closer to the left than to the edge of the mountain there. I think that will be all good here. And the water will be, if it would be a calm water, we probably will see something like that. So I might just have, without taking into the account of the spray of the water, might look for the shapes of the waves, approximately just to give a tiny bit of a guidance, directions of the stroke. So for example, further at the back, we have more of the calmness. It's not calm, it's just a perspective that the height of the waves is much more shallow. Somewhere right behind, we've got that swelling coming here. And then I can look for that exciting ridge, and it might even go a tiny bit higher if I wanted to do that. Okay, somewhere there. So I'm sketching with my lines, kind of having a feel for the picture. I will have loads of white spray here, and perhaps a little direction of what's going to happen to the water as it plunges. So it's probably a rock somewhere here. It goes over it and it plunges further in again, and it breaks, and it's been pushed back. So it's following that direction. And I think the loads of white foam is going to be over my rock. So the actual ridge of it might be moved later. Well, it will be definitely moved. But for now, I almost painted without the foam, without that exposed area. Right, anything else I need to be looking at here? Perhaps some of the fresh turquoise, fresh green of that water, probably going to stop somewhere in this area, and the rest will be dashing this direction with all the foam. Okay, so I'm almost building a rough skeleton of the wave, the direction of the water. Right, so my drawing is more or less finished. Let's do a tiny bit of the cloud direction, perhaps. Got a beautiful light coming through. So perhaps that will come again. I need to look, my lines are a little bit too parallel here. Can I change that gently to maybe lead it away, or maybe come close and then lead it away? Maybe another cloud will come in here. Okay, so maybe that will open up the light across. So it's thinking through, making adjustments, making decisions. Okay, maybe some more of a shadow gonna come in. Sketching with the line could be very exciting, but it also could be very frustrating. Bringing a little extra tone makes the difference when you're working. So I often do quick designs with the lines, just a roughly positioning, a roughly placement, and then use a tone to make that clarification and a final decision of shapes. So for example, at my drawing stage, I'm picking up now a larger flat brush, synthetic brush, and I'm gonna go for some red, crimson, bit of violet, a little bit of black. So similar colors, but a little bit more darker, a little bit more solid in nature, not maybe as transparent. I think I prefer the crimson and black version there. And what I want to do, I want to get my rocks painted in that variation of darkness, maybe just a tiny bit lighter. I don't want it to be all pink, but I want to get the feel for the place. And that will be. Now it takes longer with a brush. If I were to pick up a sponge, that's much more quicker. Okay. And it also gives you some exciting strokes. Okay. In comparison to the brush strokes, sometimes they're a little bit too repetitive. I can also press on a sponge a little bit more to get the color come out stronger. So at the moment my color is partially transparent, and that's a good start really for it. I'll go for a little bit of ultramarine here. I want to see a bit more of that coolness. It's almost like Payne's Grey or darker version of indigo. And against the grey, it also makes the color slightly lighter. I'll work with darker colors perhaps later on for some of those rocks. But look at that direction. That's done very quickly. And it also allows me to differentiate between the colors. So one is close to us, one is behind. Maybe that's when I'll start having again a bit more warmth to it. Maybe there's a different light in it. Okay, so as we're building all this texture through. Okay, let me see if I can adjust that light in a moment as well. And again, perhaps a little bit more coolness at the back. Okay. I'm picking up again a little bit more ultramarine. And it also allows me to see the difference between the mountain, the middle ground rock, a bit more close-up rock as well. Right, let's me take a quick photograph of this stage. So that's my drawing will be finished. So I've got my major layout. I think I'm quite happy with the layout. Perhaps I might drop one of those rocks a little bit lower if I want to see more of the green water, that beautiful movement. But I can work with it straight away with color as well. So I think I'm making visually those decisions here as well. Right. Right, Jackie. I don't think I've been recording. I thought I have pressed the recording.
Ah, I
Ah,
can't tell, but I'm definitely recording.
okay, that's fine. No worries. Request to start. It's been requested. Host is recording. Maybe just not allowing me to do it.
I got the message that said, "Do you
Yeah,
allow it?" And I said yes. So
yeah. I don't know. Not
mm,
sure.
anyway, I've got a recording which I can send you.
Okay. Sorry. I thought I was more in control with it, but no worries. Right. Okay. Now, if I'll have a so you can see how the moment that my paint dries, you can straight see the colors there. So I'm just gonna take a quick photograph of this stage for you. So then you've got a visual hard image as well to refer if you were painting it later on. Easier to compare it to a stationary image rather than a video sometimes. Right, and let's continue with the color. Right. I'm going to write my sponge is clean. It's just I think it just colored it. Okay, just double check washing it. and to dry it a little as well. And I'm going to start with getting some drama of light. Now, my board is already gray. I already done some dark tones. That's why I'm going for some light. To make my colors go even more exciting, kind of the blends, the texture. I've got a spray bottle and I'm going to spray the sky here. Now my acrylic's already drying here, so it's not going to affect anything here. I'm just going to test it. That's a spray, so just a gentle droplets to spray. So it just will pick up more softness of the color. So for example, if I were to bring a bit of warmth to my painting now to my sky, I'll go for a little bit of ochre and some white. Okay, so that's quite a light color. So if I were to make a test on it on my board, if I dilute it and make it quite diluted, we've got slightly different gradients, so the gray shows through and it becomes a darker version. Okay, so if I'll go for a little bit more of the ochre and crimson, okay, just tiny bit more. So I'm going to start with finding a little bit of light, but maybe not a full strength of light. So perhaps somewhere here, let me see if I were to bring something behind my board a little bit. Okay, that's better. So let's bring this light over. Okay, so I'm picking up a tiny bit of water droplets and it's dilute my paints just gently to make it stronger. Some of the paints stay a bit more concentrated, some of the paints are staying a little bit more diluted. Okay, so that's all good. Let's see. Maybe it will be a little bit of light coming at the back. Okay, maybe some darker warmth. Okay, I'm just going to check what those bits are. I think it's from my tissue. Right, so a bit of crimson and a dab of black. Again, if I wanted to have that lovely grayish pink, okay, it might bring me some of that light over on top here. I'm planning not direct light yet, not the strongest bold light. Okay, what are those bits again? So I can touch up the extra highlights in that area after, but let's just find some of that playful light. Okay, I'm interested to see how the paints will dry because they're partially transparent, so they will not be very not going to dry the same darkness. They probably will dry slightly dark. I prefer to build up on my light in acrylics and in oils as well. If I'll lean my board a bit more, you can just see more definition of that pink. And I'll go slightly deeper ochre and crimson. Again, almost as a primer before the future strokes coming up. Some lighter strokes, which will be done in the later stages. Okay, anything else here? Okay. Maybe some more. So when I'm working with a sponge, I can do my strokes quite direct and quick. I can just smudge, almost just holding the sponge, just almost not pressing on it. But I can also squeeze the corner or a couple of corners together and have it that point. The paint started coming out, and that's where you have that stronger pigment and more concentrated pigment through. Can even get even stronger, no water layer. So that's will be lovely. That's what I'm going to slowly start introducing now. So then I have moisture there, but also some almost like a dry, not dry pigment, but much drier pigment. So let's have a look how some of this light will come in. I'll just dab it for a little bit first to see how it will start settling. And if it's too sharp or it's too strong, I can use my sponge to take things off or smudge things. Yeah, so that's fantastic equipment, our sponges. Can just work, and especially if you've got a darker background, it's a lovely way of painting. I'm also seeing some beautiful warm lights on my mountains, bit of water here. So I think I'm going to mix tiny bit more darker pigment, maybe my crimson and violet, maybe tiny dab of black. And let's just place, I'm going to put a larger marks than I need. So when I do work with my darker shadows afterwards, I can just shrink it. Same, perhaps there might be a little something across coming here. Okay. And even perhaps a darker version, but more solid, to be applied maybe on the edge. Some of my rocks here might be just catching a little bit of light. And because it's more opaque color, it will appear different as well in the final stages. So through the shadows, which I will get even more eventually, these will be just a little extras to come through in the warmth of light. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm rinsing the sponge. I need similar colors, but I'm going to work into some darkness, but I think there's quite a lot of paint there. So that's why I wash the sponge. So it's not going to be filled with a lot of paint, which will need to be compensated. Okay. Right. So for my grays, if I were to go for some of the violet and black, but this time adding tiny bit of white with it. Okay. I want to see some of the borders. Okay, how that will work. Tiny bit of black here as well. Okay. So I want to start, hopefully part of my colors, partially this light area already drying. Okay, it's getting more stronger and okay, that's better. Right, let me see if I can put something else behind my board. Hold on. Okay, and I'll just adjust my camera a little more and step it away. Zoom out. I'll see the bottom now. Right, just be a moment. And my camera. Okay, zoomed out. Here we go. A bit like that. That's better, so I can see more colors as they are. Okay, right, so my sponge is here. Let's now work into my gray. as it's still damp. That's another good thing about the sponge. I applied that line and I can still work on it. Even I had to adjust my equipment and stop. And my strokes are partially transparent and the gray is coming through, but the depth is quite nice. Might bring a little bit of blue to it now. My fellow blue. Oh, sorry, my ultramarine. Okay, maybe bring that a little bit of extra darkness. Still, I want to have a good impact, but not as strong as my rocks. Oops. As I'm talking, something has started to run here. Okay. That's obviously smudged it all. It's okay, we can come back to that. So here's my ultramarine, some violet. Okay, let's see how that darkness will be. Okay, just need a little bit of that heavy body somewhere here, and how it will start touching this part of the land. It will start blending. I'm not going to be painting with a sponge all the way, but my earlier stages I find it's easier to work with a sponge. Let's put some more of that darkness here as well. So quite a sharp ridge. I use a clean edge of the sponge, just softens it immediately. So it just means that I can have a contrast shape and a soft shape. Okay, perhaps even more light covering here. Okay. And I'm leaning away in my chair so I can see shapes from a distance. Probably going to leave this shape out for the moment. I can touch it up with the brush later on. I'll look for the main shapes now. Maybe not, maybe I'll put a little bit of color in there now. Okay. Somewhere there. Maybe it will give me an opportunity to look at that softness of the light. Got more of a sharp edge for the central mountain, maybe for this side. I really want it to be more soft, almost lost. That's quite nice. Just soften this border as well. Okay, I'm not too sure about that bold ochre. Maybe tone it down with a tiny bit more lighter color. Okay, that one's a little lonely stroke. Partially, I'm waiting for strokes to dry. Partially, it's quite nice to see them settling in as they are. Okay, let's see how that goes. Right, and perhaps tiny bit more light. Just gently, if I put a tiny dab of water on the tip of my sponge and just almost let it sketch itself. Maybe use that corner of the sponge again just to draw with. I can just about guess where it's going to be. You can't see it because of my sponge covering it. I can't quite see it either, so I'm just approximately placing it there and finding what's happening when I'm lifting it. Okay, so that's quite nice. And the same, I'm using a clean corner just to add a tiny bit more water and smudge that across as well. That's quite exciting sky. Maybe a little bit more weight for that corner of the sky. Might be quite good as well. Just playing with the sponge and light and dark tones and maybe minimal use of color So only I've got my two warm colors, and then I've got two colors for the coolness. That's plenty to work with. Maybe that might be a hint of the valley in the distance. If you really like something in your painting, but you're not too sure if you need to develop it further or you need to work over it, simply let it dry, simply with acrylics. Let it dry, and then you can paint over it. And if you don't like it, you can wipe it off very easily. But always give it a go if you're still unhappy with or something is still not quite right for it. So I want this corner being a little bit more deeper. Maybe that blue will support it a bit more. Okay, tiny bit of indigo like color. My black is coming in. Let's test it here. Okay, tiny bit more black. So I like the texture here. I just need a little bit of something. That's better. So I know my mountains, so my rocks probably going to have some of that darkness. So I can go a little darker here. Okay. There we go. So playing with that. And we can decide if anything else could come to stop that line just shooting out. Perhaps it will be just calming it a little bit more. Okay. So some of that blocking and exploring on the sky. I probably can do a bit more there, but if I'll stop for now and get some greens in for the water, and we can start doing some defining more darkness perhaps from the rocks as well. Right, so for the greens, my palette, my mixing space is not huge because my colors are drying as I'm mixing them, and I can just reuse the same surface. If you're using a lot of water, which I have been actually with my sponge, not a lot of water, but a reasonable amount of water, it just takes a little bit longer to dry, so I'll start mixing some colors here. But later on, all of this is going to be dry, and I can just continue mixing and mixing it. Because my colors so far on the palette are flat. The moment you start having chunks of paint, for example, somewhere around here, and it becomes all over your palette, it's like little craters everywhere. That's why you might need a new palette and another palette and another palette and another palette, yeah? So it happens, I think, here quite naturally. Right, I'm going to use my clean water here now. Sorry, don't need my brush now. I was just pointing with my brush. Right, come back to my sponge for big colors. So white, emerald green, phthalo blue, a little bit more of that white just to get more body of the color. Okay, a little bit more blue. Okay, so I'm just using the tip of the sponge to mix it. Okay. And I think that might be the color coming in partially here. Might go a little bit dark afterwards. But if I block some of that color in, it goes really excitingly over the gray. And a darker version of it, a deeper turquoise. Okay, let's bring that one in here. That's better. And let's apply it probably in more areas than I need, but just to bring it over first, as I will be going a little bit more further, I'll have a slightly lighter tone. It's might because of the light within the sky. It could be the volume of the white foam around there. Okay, and I also want to bring a little bit of. So I haven't washed my sponge. I'm moving from one color to another, from one slightly darker or lighter, slightly cooler, slightly warmer. So I'm going to a little bit more warm. So I'm going to go for a tiny bit of ochre. Actually, I might add a tiny bit of cadmium yellow, just a drop to have my green. I'll just put it here. I had to make my green just slightly fresh. I think ochre will make it slightly duller. Okay, that's better. Right, I can see the potential of the color I can mix with that. That's it, some cadmium yellow. Yeah, I can test it against my board. It's much more yellower on my painting than it's on the screen at the moment. And let's bring it over. Okay. So as a block of color, just spreading it, directions of the strokes will remind me of the directions of the wave. Okay, this will mingle a bit better later on. Tiny bit more darker color perhaps as it crashes. Let's get that darker tone mingling a little bit more here. Okay, maybe a little bit of that warmer tone coming at the back. Don't think by warm I mean that hint of yellow in my green is there. Might just leave it as it is for now and build up the darknesses more carefully with a brush. But let's build some of that darkness for the further distance close to the horizon. So those darker phthalo blues with emerald green against the gray background, against those darker blacks, darker violets, darker tones, grays, working quite nicely. Okay, less accurately done with a sponge. I might just go for a little bit of ultramarine there as well, a bit more further. So just putting the color in, seeing how it settles, and perhaps again adjusting it, direction or shape or scale of the distant waves later on. Again, I'm moving from one color to another, from one color to another. So it gives me that bigger range of choices in color there as well. Okay, a bit too strong. So let's just do some dabs. I don't have to paint with a sponge. You can do loads of things with a brush as well. But it does give you loads of freedom and less recognizable strokes. Yeah, that's a flat brush stroke. That's a round brush stroke. That's a drag, or that's when that's just becoming smudged, sharp border, soft borders. Okay. Perhaps tiny bit more depth of color. Maybe just tiny. Okay, or I can even do it when the paint dries. So I might just do a little bit. And perhaps just a little over than I need, just in case I can see some color behind the foam and some blue. That might be a helpful color for my whites later on. Okay. Right, what's happening here now as well? The water's coming a bit more close to the rock, so there's some whites. And also some water is coming over. And I also said I'm going to paint my rock a little bit further down. Okay. Remember that. So perhaps some of this will come over across and a little more warmth of the green. I think that will work nice. Tiny bit more lower area. That's it. So we've got that opportunity to see more of the water. Okay. That will be quite nice as well. Let's make these slightly different in size, one and the other shapes. Okay, so that silhouette coming through now. It's kind of start the movement, slowly starting the movement, but still quite calm because there is no that white foam. Now, before I do anything with white, I'm gonna let the greens to dry. Because the whites I will work with from darker whites to most lighter ones. And I will use a little bit of pastel as well. I'd like to create some of those thinner lines, those lovely veins on the water. Okay, that might be just coming in here as well. And just checking how that color or that darkness, that light, how that will work over the rocks. Sometimes that's all it is. Often people ask, oh, you've just painted all that area here, but you actually repainted it afterwards. You weren't planning to leave it there. Why did you do that? It is testing the color, how it will go over some of the darks. It is finding perhaps sometimes the shapes or dynamics, and then I can paint over it as well. So it's that color from underneath. Sometimes it's a very, very exciting thing to see. Okay, and now let's do my rocks a little bit bolder. Okay, so sponge rinsed. And that's where we'll need my black. Let's start maybe with this rock. I would like to leave some of those pinks, those darker pinks, and some of the textured rock already. It gives me already light middle tone. I'm just gonna look for some darker shapes. Now, photograph doesn't quite pick up all the lovely, well, actually photograph does, but the print doesn't pick up that variety. So I have to imagine it, or sometimes my camera, I'm not a professional photographer, but I often take pictures which might remind me of what I've been seeing. And then I just work from the memories. Right, so I'm gonna go for a little bit of ultramarine and black. If I'll go for solid color, not using any white, and I'm not using much water, so that's what I meant by solid. It will give me quite a strong color, but strong tone, that darkness. So I'm just working maybe around the highlights. And I still want to bring kind of bring an extra quality to the rock rather than just paint over it. Okay. So if I've got a highlight, it means that there will be somewhere a shadow next to it. It's quite continuous, bit of a boring line. Can I make something different out of it? Something that's more exciting. Okay. And also, I don't paint a fence. So often when we have a brush, we tend to paint it one way, the other way. Yeah. Sponge gives us that flexibility of, okay, I'm almost sketching that shadow here. Maybe there is a ridge and there is another ridge. And it's pressing the sponge sideways suddenly gives me a shape, suddenly gives me that block. Okay. Not sure if I like that shape, but I quite like the approach to it. Maybe it's too much light here. Okay, maybe it will be a little bit better if it will be less in our face because all the focus need to remain there. It's almost like we need to be skimming through it as we look at it. So let's see how. Also, any wet surface, just a clean surface, might appear slightly darker. Okay, not a very good comparison here, but tend to make damp paints tend to look a little bit darker on a screen, especially. Once it dries, that's when I'll know the true colors I've got. Okay, now let's have a look at that ridge. So I'm using similar colors I used before. But perhaps the concentration. So that's one had the ultramarine and black, of course, the little pinks in there. That one mainly was cadmium red and black. So I'm going back to the same colors, but they will have a different proportion of mixture. And I quite like to have a sharper contrast between the rocks. Okay, but I do want it to be soft. I want that shadow to be a little soft and don't have bold contrast within the blacks because my white will give that contrast. So I don't want a double contrast. So the rocks need to be read as a silhouette. So against the white hugging that rock here, I need to make sure I have got that silhouette. Might get lost with my wave, sorry, with my blue, actually is okay for now. But the white will need to be thought about. Okay, any other varieties here? Okay, maybe a bit softer here. Okay, that's good. For the mountains, I've got much more smaller strokes. I probably will need a brush there. Those larger shapes definitely feel much better using them. The sponge here. So let's work with some really strong shapes of my perhaps violet here. Got some shadows over on this corner. I just drag some of that darkness across. Okay, so if I've got specific lengths of lines, maybe one of that need to be longer than the other. Maybe the widths need to be changed. So I'm looking for that variety of shapes as well in line. Okay, maybe the gaps are a bit similar. So what else could be done there to vary it? Doesn't mean that's not going to happen, but again, if I'll look at it carefully, it's more spotting it and noticing it and planning for it. Right, I think I can bring my other rocks from under these green. That's quite exciting now, isn't it? So I've got a little extra light around it. Okay. Okay. So these are leaning out. Also, when we're painting shapes, big shapes like rocks, sometimes skies, sometimes they remind us of something like a specific, just a silhouette of an animal or specific something. Look out for it. I think I've got some sort of a silly shape going on here, so I might deliberately reshape it or introduce a lighter color and then the shadow. So that shape is gone. Okay. And I also want to bring, as I was bringing some pinks over these rocks, I think I can bring a little darker version of turquoise. I think a dab of white with ultramarine and emerald green. I think that will be quite nice. Maybe a tiny bit more darkness, more from the blue, and even perhaps from the violet. I'm not going to use the black. Okay, so that's a darker color. So let's have a look how it appears on a gray background. But let's have a look how it will look so against the. Okay, maybe a little too dark, a little clashing with my water. Okay, let's wipe it off. Tiny bit more lighter tone, perhaps. Maybe a little more green. Maybe that's where the black comes in. It just makes it less linked to the water. Just want that little, that's better. I think that's will be better. It's almost as some of that continuation of the green. Just finding more flatter surfaces, how that rock been created. Okay, that's quite nice. Perhaps that could go slightly darker here as well. So I'm doing those strokes a little bit repetitive in widths and shapes. So I'm trying to organize them a bit more close together and group them up. Perhaps tiny bit more light in a couple of areas. Just catching that little extra light. Maybe that moonlight, maybe, yeah, we've got the last sunshine, but maybe from here we've got a little bit of a moonlight even coming through. So it has that fabulous atmosphere. Get something here. Perhaps that light will come in. Maybe too much, but that's okay. Let's place some more light, perhaps somewhere here. Again, perhaps it's just a wet rock, the effect of that wetness, that wave just been in its, maybe occasional large wave going over it. A little deeper color where I wiped it off here. And again, I often need to give myself that freedom, just going and exploring and not thinking of, okay, that's going to be my final stroke, or how that's going to be dark, or is that looking pretty or not. Oh, this is a lovely stroke, but I'm not sure about the rest. It's going, it's exploring, it's making mistakes, it's changing your mind. Okay, that's flattened that rock, so that's not gonna work here. Maybe diagonal of it. is not going to work. Okay, maybe a little bit more light. Just want to kind of connect, that's better. Okay. Feels like I could do with a little bit more extra highlights, but I think to get it dried will be better. So then I can just work on top of it. Now, also feels like I could do with there isn't any dark rocks, but I think I might benefit from something a little more darker. It's almost like a underwater rocks, which the water will start hitting. Okay, that's looking good. How about if we'll have a little break, maybe a couple of minutes, 5 minutes. I can change the water and maybe answer some of the questions, and then it will allow my painting to dry. And also, and then we can continue. How does that sound?
That sounds fabulous, Julia. I have to say, I'm absolutely mesmerized. I've never used a sponge before. What kind of sponge do you use?
This is a car sponge.
A car
Um,
sponge.
Car sponge. You can see the round end of it. Just a big, whatever it's called, jumbo car washing sponge. I find they're the best for a pound. I just cut them into sizes. I think because they the holes in them are just so equal because of synthetic sponge in comparison to natural sponge.
Right.
Um, Natural sponge is a bit more heavier and it's got stronger texture. So controlling the moisture and pigment, how it's within the sponge is a little bit difficult. And I think they wear out and they bits coming out from it. But the car sponge working perfectly. And it's, yeah, gives you loads of pieces by the time you cut it. So,
The other question I had was, is
yeah,
that what make of acrylic paint do you use?
right. I'm using System 3
Okay.
B-dubs. I find them really exciting because I can squeeze loads of paint and don't save them. Okay. And I use it at college and university when I used to teach there. Used to buy big supplies. So I'm really used to it. Um, so if you're using Winsor & Newton ones, they're fantastic. They'd be probably double the price. But nothing's wrong with System 3 at all. I really love them.
Right.
Just don't over dilute them with water. Okay. And then they will be perfect and the really strong colors. My main colors are more or less these ones, an occasional, might be an orange one, yeah. And I think that's my main colors I use anyhow. So
Mm,
you don't have to have a lot of color. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8.
7, and then
Three,
plus
four.
black and white.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, yellow and ochre close. 4, 5, 6,
Ah,
7. Um,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
Mhm.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions coming up on the
Okay.
chat. I don't know if anyone else has got a question. If you do, just unmute yourself and get on with it.
Okay. Right. Otherwise, I'll go and change my water.
Can I just ask,
Yes. Yes. Sure.
in the very beginning, I didn't quite grasp why were you using the water spray when you were
Ah, because I wanted to have a little extra moisture on the surface, so when my sponge is working, it
ah,
smudges
right,
freely
right,
rather than having a sharper edge. Okay.
right. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's
So
great.
it's I can kind of place a chunk of paint, and so it will stay as a chunk, but also the other parts of it smudges quite nicely. Try putting some water. Spray is easier rather than applying water on the shiny surface of the board.
Hmm.
So spraying it and then just working, even with a brush. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, even if I'll just spray it here. And if I were to bring my brush over, let's say if I'll go for some strong white, yeah, because I've got some grays, will be easy. So chunk of white will just
yeah,
appear more like this here. Okay,
yeah.
not like this. Sorry, that's gonna run. Hold on. So if I were to paint it there, so I've got that softness immediately happening, yeah, without me doing anything. Okay,
Yeah.
so it becomes almost like wet on wet. Okay,
Yeah.
it's happening here now, yeah?
Yeah, like with watercolor. Yeah,
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 yeah. So if I were to persuade it just a little, it's my gray has more qualities within it then, yeah?
yeah,
There you
yeah,
go, you can see it better than that.
yeah.
So that's what I was trying to work those shapes and allow my sponge or my paint to do the work for me. Okay.
Right. Yes, lovely.
And if I'll go with my white, my stronger white, let's say I can see my borders of my droplets is somewhere here. So if I touch it, it will stay strong where it's dry and will go very soft where it's watery. Yeah, it just gives you some extra
Yeah.
something to play with. Yeah, try it with the color or just white against a different darkness surface. And that's will be quite exciting. You can just do all tonal painting just with that grey board, sprayed water, and white.
It's brilliant.
Quite exciting as well.
Yeah, it is. The whole thing looks incredibly exciting and dramatic and
Oh, thank you.
mm,
Fantastic. Right, what size painting am I using? Right, so that is about, let me measure. I've got my ruler here. So that's 41 centimeters by about just under 60. Can I have the ruler close to me? I prefer to work larger if I can. Small is great, but for the recording class, it's much more condensed. So imagine if you've got a sponge and a bigger work, and working with some huge strokes, not huge, but larger strokes than our normal brushes, gives
mm.
you so much freedom and so much movement within your arm and wrist. Especially if you're standing in front of your easel, that's fantastic as well. And then the whole body is allowing you to create those strokes. Okay, right. I'm gonna take a picture of my painting as well. I got carried away. I should have taken a picture of this as well. I got too excited with the sky and then the greens. Especially when the audience is quiet, sometimes I get carried away. Okay. Right, I'm gonna just change my water. Right, I'm back. Let's put this aside here. Painting is slowly dry. Might just tiny bit. No, it's okay. It's all dry naturally a bit more. I think I might come back to my distant mountains first. Right. Are we okay to carry on? Okay, maybe we've got Jackie still getting on her back. You're still
I'm
here.
still here. Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, that's okay. Right, are we okay to get going? Okay. Right, so I'm going to now start using my brushes. I have some flat brushes and some filbert brushes as well. I like both. The flat brushes gives you fantastic straight lines, or the highlights of similar, let's say, on the water might be very easy to do. But also, if I need to have corners which have those geometric straightish lines, that would be really nice. When the filbert brush will give me some more softer shapes, and especially for the clouds, that will be really exciting to define more nuances there. So let's start with my flat brush. And I need a tiny bit more paint top up for my ultramarine and a little more black. I tend to, people ask me in the past, how do I keep my paints damp? Well, I just use it quite a lot and then I just top it up. Don't usually have a problem that they dry, and unless I'm painting outside in a windy or hot day, then that might happen. So I squeeze enough to pick up enough paint without saving it, but at the same time, I'll prefer to squeeze more as I go, so the paint remains damp. Right, now I'll start painting with hardly any water introduced to the paint. So to keep the strokes moist, I'll need more paint. Okay, if I do use the water, it might be a minuscule amount, just a tiny bit soften it now. I think my most runniness of the strokes is going to stop now. So I want to work into my mountain here. I want to define tiny bit more of the land there. Let's find some of those darks first, just want to have that clarification there. So I need my ultramarine. I need a dab of black. Okay, and I will need a dab of white. Okay, I want to see some of that blue. Okay. And my sample paper is again here. Just now, I haven't got as much gray left here, so perhaps even testing it on my painting will be better. So let's bring some of this blue, okay, a little bit more across. Now I can still use my sponge as a tool. So I introduce some sharper shapes. Can I just smudge it over my existing color if I want to have it hidden in the cloud? Lovely. Okay, just let it be how it's going to dry. And I can also, almost like on that sprayed surface, I can just persuade it to soften further. Okay, want to have a little bit of that coolness, cool indigo, perhaps close to my middle ground rocks, and perhaps I can go more, a little bit more into the violet and the distance there. I also need to check where my horizon line, if it's not clashing, it's maybe my mountains or the rocks, maybe mountains, could go a tiny bit higher so it doesn't have the little clash. So perhaps my bolder light will be moved. Okay, so I'm just gonna find a shape here. Okay. Perhaps a little more definition. Okay, I can go a little bit lighter here, so just using a tiny bit of water, not lighter, gentler with that depth. Okay. I've got a very bold shape against the light. We hardly ever have a strong silhouette of a shape. Now I can see it there, but it's still not, it's out of the whole painting suddenly just becomes too solid. So again, my sponge comes to help out, just to smudge a little. Sometimes it just brings that pigment a little bit higher, blends it softer. So there is kind of almost like a natural highlight on the mountain from that light. Now I wanted a little bit more solid stroke as well. So those are partially soft and diluted. And I want my rocks to be more surrounded in darkness here. So they do look closer to us. Right, and let's find a bit of light, bit of snow. I'm not sure what. I think it might be a bit of both, perhaps. So I can define my peaks a bit more. Little valleys, right? That's where I'll still probably need that diluted. I said I'm not going to need it much, but I think that's a smaller down there. Okay. And a little more solid crimson and black mixture. Okay, that's quite a look how solid that's going to look. And it would be good to have some darkness against the sea, but I might find it balance elsewhere. Okay, it's a little reflecting still. And I'm going to let this corner dry as well. I think there's some sharpness of dark is happening, but I think that part might dry lighter. So let's give it a little more time. Okay. Don't know if I wanted so much darkness actually. So let's just bring tiny bit more medium tone. Well, it's wet. Let's work into that. Okay. It still looks like a strong silhouette. Might even put another ridge coming out from the distance. Maybe the locks are starting. Maybe just that light of a distant mountain. Okay. Still want to break some of that darkness. A little tricky with the reflection from the camera and light, but I'm reducing my darkness. I think once it dries, I can put a little bit of darkness just to support it. I think that will look better. And I can also use this pale purple, pale pink as a little reflection from the sky that connects with the color on the mountain, just to flatten some of, not flatten, to land that light. Might be a little breaking wave, but the distant one. Okay, might be not too much. I don't want to overdo it. So just placing some and then seeing how much of it we need. Tiny bit more lighter version of it. I can see some, it's almost like we've got a spotlight here. So the closer to this area we get, the lighter the tones, highlights become. So I'm starting already working in some basic new, no, that's a bit too light, nuances. Okay, but if I smudge it, it dilutes it and becomes less strong. Okay, that's much better. Still want maybe this light need to come closer, then can feel that pink will work somewhere here first. If I dry my brush, kind of wipe it and just use what's left in it, I'll pick up, okay, I've got quite a bit of dark colors once I taken the paint off. So if I put a little bit more pink and white, okay, and almost prepare the brush for dry brushing. So wipe it off and drag it across a little sideways. So that's when you start having, again, not a perfect strokes, precise. I find it hard to do fine lines, but I'm quite happy to build up on texture. Line, that's much better. And again, if it's too much or partially too strong, just using a sponge and just persuading it to, or drag or smudge, makes all that difference. So I don't want that too similar consistency. Okay, maybe a little bit cleaner. Okay, that's quite nice as well. Okay, right, and as I'm coming more close to my foam, let's start establishing some of the shadows of the foam, of that crashing wave. That's what we're constantly building up to. We have to build other things before actually doing it. Right, so I'm going to use some white, some violet, and a little bit of ochre. Okay, maybe a bit too much of ochre. Let's build up a tiny bit more of violet. Okay. And let's put it perhaps against my gray. Okay, it's almost lost. But against some of my darkness. Yeah, that's quite a light stroke against the darker shapes. Right, I'm going to place it. I'm going to use the brush, and quite a rough way. So, for example, if we've got some of that color, some of that spray coming in, the reason I'm going not for white and going for a little bit warmer color, it almost shows me the rock behind, and also give me plenty of opportunities to build up lighter color as I'm working into the space. Okay, so perhaps that wacky stroke is going to be there. If I don't like it, I'll remove it. Yeah. And maybe do another one, maybe drag it upwards, bristle upwards. Okay. Sometimes having a very rough brush is fabulous. Okay, so let's see how some of that will come over. Now I do need to build up quite a volume of the white. So starting gently is good. Maybe not too much details too close or not equally. For example, with softer here, more sharpened, broken edged. Elsewhere, maybe not the same type of sharpness is going to come across here. I think I'm going to add a little more blue as well. I want my color of the foam changing as the color of the rock is changing. Okay, so I'm going for a little more ultramarine. I'm not gonna go for ochre now because that will make the color more messy, not so pleasant looking, but tiny bit of violet will be fine. So tiny bit more lighter version. Okay. And perhaps some of that water will start. So I'm doing partially dry brushing, partially thick paint. Those strokes are almost as if I've been painting with my sponge, so they're kind of playful. Might even put some water coming here. It's not on my photograph, but it might work if I place it there. I'll find out. I think it might work. I just keep a little corner tiny bit darker. Okay, might be something just opening, it's just something going over. Okay, let's see how that will start. Tiny bit more free. Okay, just a gentle splash so far. I will need to put a bigger, lighter stroke over eventually. So that spray will go further, perhaps. And the direction might change as well. Okay, let's have a look. Just thinking if I want to bring even sometimes we can see the extra water splashes, just gets further and or maybe there is an opening behind. That might be a good idea. Again, it's something not on the photograph, but it feels right to explore. Worst case scenario, don't like it, I'll paint over it. Okay, I just need to clean my sponge so I'm not smudging and bringing the color I don't want. Okay, so that will stay pure and light. Okay, maybe a little bit of that paler blue across as well somewhere here. And I wanted something a little bit more this area. So I'm not adding water, but more kind of making my brush a little more, not fluffy, but roughening it up a bit. Yeah. Can use the silhouette of the rock or define that silhouette of the rock, build up the shape, and then give it a final, almost not outline, but direction. Okay, I quite like that point of the rock, so I'll wash that one off. But perhaps some of that rock might be getting covered with that spray. Maybe some of the water is, as I was saying, might be just running. And that little highlight, just with a dry brush, it will be a good highlight. So if I do it dry first, and here's my wet sponge, that's immediately just gets that shape of the water and the rock unites. Okay. Some of these could stay a bit more sharper. I think maybe a little more softer here. So they're not in a similar size, my little marks. Okay, that's again lovely smudge. Got one shape, another shape. Can I make a slightly different scale? Okay, need tiny bit of water, otherwise it's okay, not giving me a. Okay, so maybe somewhere here. Okay, that's good. So it's still quite a lot of darkness in there, but I'm coming close to that space to be defined. Right, I'll do tiny bit more work now on my planning of the foam and the white spider lines. Now I'm going to use some soft pastels. Just a white chalk is fine. I think those are soft pastels and chalks. So I'm just going to pick up a white and just check that those areas are dry. And going to draw a few spider nets, spider lines to create those lines. Drawing it with a brush is exciting, but much more harder. So there's nothing wrong with helping yourself out. And also these lines, if I just leave them as they are, it would just look a little too strong in difference of style. But they will give me an opportunity to direct my lighter tones when I add the paint. Okay, so that's much more linear work here. Oops, where did I get my yellow from? Maybe just, oh, that's where it is. Okay, got it. Good, I didn't drag it anywhere else. Maybe bringing some of it. Sketching with the chalks. Now I'm using the white or the pastels on your acrylic painting. It's really good. Don't be scared of using it, but just don't stay just with it. Do other things. Use your paints. Do use your brushes for the lines. So a little more somewhere here. And if I were to use a clean brush, just to bring some water. Okay, this is not a clean brush, but a lot of pink on it. Okay, that's better. I can smudge or you must almost wash my pastel off. Drawing with pastel on the damp surface is a little harder, but what I'm interested in is bringing maybe my round brush and a little bit of white, diluted white. I'm going to vary the diluted white with a little bit more thicker white because I want transparency. I want that milkiness, I want that softness, and use it parallel with my chalks. Okay, so it will keep the chalk in place. So I'm not going to do all of my lines going outline in it. I'm going to make some of the lines a little wider and some of the lines I'll make disappear. Okay, so that's where that beauty will come in of that lovely light. But often when we sketch something with crayon, a block or something wider than a pencil line, it's again, it talks to us, it gives us that more playful artistic line. Finger painting is all good. So if I want to keep some of the lines, I will preserve them. Others might be just smudged. So that intensity changes, yeah? That looks a little bit false now. So bring in that smudge or the wet line is exciting, right? That darkness is a little framed here. So all I'm going to do here, I'm going to just wash off some of the white and show that depths of the green is behind the white. So it just was a little bit larger scale than I needed, perhaps. Okay. And I'm also going to start working into my light. So it's just giving me just that point of how much bright I want to go. And I will start making that happening a little more in a few places. Okay. Again, my sponge could come and help. Okay, that gives that lovely transparency of the wave. And now I'm going to start building up my darknesses, sorry, my lights as well. So I'm back to my larger brush. So if I had that color first, I need to go for a slightly darker version. So it's still partially damp. It's going to get some white to it. Okay. And again, I'm just going to take some of that moisture off the brush. I think it's a little bit wet because my brush was in the pot. So let's put a little mark to see how much lighter it is. Somewhere here. Okay, that's okay. Maybe a little bit darker. Because I want another, I think it will dry darker. I can actually see the true color. Okay. So part of us would want to go straight away and cover quite a lot of space, but we need to have the kind of constantly bearing in mind how we want to see it at the end. Almost looking for the volume of the white. That darkness will support that volume of the white. So whites also show the three-dimensional effect. So I haven't done much in it about the watercolors here, the clean, lovely, fresh greens. Will need that support with the last layer of my whites. Okay, that's a little lighter, but I think that's will be okay for now. A bit more of that light at the top. Can I have another stronger? So now, and for a bit, I have been looking at the photograph as a reference point, but not as a copy of it. I'm doing slightly different silhouette of the water here, and I'm just looking at my rocks and what's exciting in these areas are how the water's in my painting. So the photograph is a fantastic starting point, but it is the painting what is need to be worked on. Okay, that white has started to come in a little bit more. Okay. Maybe a bit too much for that area. Just take it off. Okay. This white is staying there, maybe a little more of the white is coming in, or light. And I have to be gentle with introduction of the highlights. Can't go bold too strongly, very quickly. Otherwise it will look more solid space, and we want the softness of the white. So I also want the colors to dry. Let's see if I'll put a little bit more of the white on a partially damp surface, and then I might let it dry to have. Okay, if it splashes, where would it go? Where would it stop? How it will run back. Okay. So I'm gonna perhaps just gently touch it here and then touch the sky and see if anything else in the sky need to be. I think this area needs drying a little more, but maybe some water highlight will come somewhere here. Okay, try to smudge it over. That looks like it's just going just around this area. Okay, maybe that little extra light will come behind the rock. Okay, and a tiny bit more here. As it says, gently dry. I still need to add to that light. Okay. Is that a little too much light? I'll just simplify it here for now and then come back to tweak it. Okay. Anything a little more lighter shapes. If I draw some wider white lines, and they are a bit chunky, but they're ready to be started to belong to the surface. That's better. Again, I will need to see how they dry, but that movement started to happen more. And even checking some of the whites there later as well. Okay. Right, let's just touch up my sky tiny bit more with velvet brush. I need a little more fresh white. Okay. So let's mix a little bit of cadmium yellow. Okay, that's a very bold yellow with white and maybe a dab of crimson, a dab of ochre. I want to see the warmth and light, but not just direct, fresh, yellowish white. Right, so let's bring, so I've got that boldness of light here, yeah? So let's just bring, and the same, if I were to paint with my brush, just like that would be quite nice, but it's just a big shape. But if I let the brush drag, yeah, and I just drag and see what that mark is going to be. That's much more natural light coming through than that. Yeah, just almost allows me to find the light. So it might be just a little stronger. And again, I've got my sponge, so I'm not worried what could be removed, what could be left. I just block it a little stronger. Let me rinse my sponge and partially. Also good practice. If you're doing a stroke, let's say like this one, oh, I quite like this one, yeah? Not too sure what to do with it. Take a quick photograph of it. Play with it. At least then you will have a reference of what you had, and then you might say, oh, I'm so glad I've touched it up and worked with it. Oh, actually, I'm really glad I persevered. Okay, maybe there will be some light going in there, Turner-esque light. Persevered and stayed brave. Maybe that light will come somewhere there as well. That's become much more exciting. Maybe I've a little bit overdone tone-wise here, but again, this one could be smudged and the gray cloud could have a little extra light here as well, because that light quite overwhelming here. It might gently connect. Okay, any of that similar light could come from here. I wanted some sharpness, but perhaps smaller quantities. Almost like a tiny little block, and then blend it. Let it shine there through. That gives me, that's quite a flat part of the mountain when I'm really happy with this one. So again, some more definition perhaps need to be done there. Okay. My rock of the mountain, just a little, bring it back. Okay. And perhaps a little glimpses of light. Now I can dilute or make my color close to my existing colors, but by making the color more transparent, you're doing the same thing. Okay, that's good as well. Just need to see it's not too, doesn't look like hands in there of the, okay, it doesn't look like a strong silhouette. Okay, that's okay. Maybe that, it's going to be smudged there as well. Okay, once sometimes over smudged, it lifts too much. Okay, that's exciting light. Maybe it will partially travel somewhere as well. Okay, so I'm totally in my own sky now in comparison to the photograph. There's some connections, but not as this, they're not the same. Okay, right. And let's bring this color as well. If I'll add tiny bit more emerald green, I want to see some of that warmth and light, perhaps a little bit bolder. Starting with, yeah, it doesn't appear on the screen as a almost like lime green, but it is. And I want to have, like I was doing the pinks, kind of grayish pinks, I want to see some of this paler green connecting with my whites. And the little flicks and smudges. We can work, okay, with just checking that my sponge is clean. We have just last 10 minutes or so. So I'll see what I can do with as much as finishing the piece as possible. Okay, that's too flat. Okay, I want that lovely lift. That's better. Okay, just a bit too similar in size. Those shapes. Okay, that's better again. So it's happy accidents as well as looking out for shapes. And I also might bring this yellowish green as my highlight, perhaps to some of my foam here, just to reflect some of the colors I've got here. Not sure if you can see how greenish lemon yellow that is. Apologies for the camera inconsistency of color. Okay, well that's maybe those little extra directions and lines. Colors, I think that start to be a little gray here, so if I were to bring a little more green, and I'll send you a photograph. Have a look for that range of greens in the waves. Okay, so some more white could be now coming up to the ridge of this wave, perhaps softening down out a little bit more, catching that light on the pink, making that connection. Okay, so again, I'm spotting similarities in my strokes, and that's what I want to change with a sponge. Clean, smudged, a little bit of that chalkiness of smudge, a bit of that imperfection, but also I do want to see the almost like the border, that ridge traveling in. The lighter tone of the splash here, I'd like to have. Okay, maybe I'm just rushing a little here, and maybe I should have just let it dry. I did like that earlier wave, but it's okay. Something happening there, but maybe not there yet. Okay, let's come back to my mountain again. My distant mountain. Let's have a smaller brush and back to red and black and a little dab of violet. I just build perhaps a gentle lightness, and then an extra shadow. So as I've added some extra light in the sky, I think that will be good. And that extra darkness, maybe even a little blue there. Much more solid paint now. Okay, it's still reflecting for us to see. I'll lean the board a little more close towards me. That's better. That's it. So again, I'll need to wait for it to dry to see that change, to see the reflection of the strokes will stop creating extra ridges. Don't need to define my horizon and tidy things up on the horizon. Could go with the color of the water, or could go with the color of the mountains. Okay. Not interested in a perfect line. I'm interested in lost and found lines. So if I wanted to spot it, I could see it, but at the same time, I don't want to tell the exact depths. I'm quite excited to see that valley and the view through it. Quite excited to see some of these whites. Right, let's do any more, and a little bit more highlights on the water. So I'm constantly working in one area, then another area. It gives me a tiny rest and more of the paints dry and actually see for the painting what it is. So if I were to go for a dry brush, loading some white and just taking some of the chunks of it just a little off and introducing that stronger white. Or just even dab in some water. So I've got a chunk of paint and I've got a watery corner. So almost like on that wet surface when I was painting, you've got almost a little damper corner and a drier corner. Okay. Still quite excited to put something stronger here. Okay. Maybe tiny a little bit more aside. Is our session coming to the end? If you thought of any questions you might want to ask while I'm doing the last touches, that will be lovely to hear.
One question that did come up, Julia, was how big is your painting?
So it's about 41 centimeter by just under 60.
Right.
So it's small
Near
for me. Just a little bit smaller than A2 paper.
Right.
Okay. So it's a good size for the screen to fit, and the larger the better. If you've got that opportunity to paint with a sponge and those lovely wet strokes. Okay. A little more of that white here. Maybe something more solid rather than a lot of little bits. That's better as well. Yeah, that splash is gonna happen there. So exciting, playful, and hopefully something you might want to give it a go. Might want to play with your skies. You want to discover some waves or some underwater rocks, or just even how to mix your darker tones, or how you can create the whole atmosphere. Even if you just use your gray, little bit of dark and light, we were doing it on the skies like that, sorry. Yeah, so maybe you'll give it a go and have a little play in your own time. So thank you very much for today. I hope it was something you might want to take away with you. And I hope you had fun watching me tonight.
I
Thank
have
you.
to say, I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone, Julia, to say that it has just been absolutely mesmerizing.
Oh, thank you.
I don't
Very
paint in
much.
acrylics, but I have to say you've inspired me to have a go.
Well,
And
if you think of watercolors,
mm,
having that diluted version of acrylics,
mm,
it's very close to your watercolors. Yes, yeah, yeah.
much stronger and more
Yes,
powerful colours, I
yes.
think.
And also try painting with watercolors and a sponge. I do it quite a lot as well.
I'm going straight out to buy myself a sponge, I
Ah,
think.
sponge, yeah, cut. Um, yes, that's be fantastic for you to try that. Brilliant.
It's been absolutely fabulous. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you
Um,
very, very much.
can we give a round of applause, I think? Does anybody have any questions? Oh, someone has asked about the card or cardboard that you use.
Yes, I buy just a grey board. It's called just board. It comes in quite a large size, so I just pre-cut it the sizes I want, or prime it quite large and then cut it when I know what size I want. So yeah, just a grey.
What sort of weight is it?
It's almost like a mount board, the same what you do your mounts, but just not having any color or primer on it.
Okay.
Okay, you can even use your mount boards. Mount boards will come out a bit more expensive though, but they have got that almost lovely coat. You can probably more or less paint straight away on that. It's not going to
Yeah.
absorb as much moisture. Yeah, so yeah, like a mount board.
Okay. Looking at the chat, I think we're all going to be trying a sponge.
Excellent, fantastic, superb.
I just
I
say
Keith.
would love to see your work after you had some experiments. Not
Ooh,
perfect, but just some of those exciting experiments, exciting insights to your painting.
you're on, Julia.
Yeah.
uh,
Keith.
Julia, can I just say, it was absolutely riveting.
Oh, thank
You were
you.
commenting continuously and painting at the same time for over 2 hours. I've never experienced anything like it. Can I just ask, you
Yes,
obviously deliberately left the water in the foreground
yes,
very roughly painted.
yeah.
Do you find that is more effective, or is it uh, or is it that you've just sort of run out of steam? As it
I do like the roughness of it. I know my photographer friend, he loves playing with different settings on his phone, and he loves quite a lot of water being, like um, timed, so it's over a number of seconds, it's flowing. So when I quite like that roughness and that crunchiness of it. So sometimes I paint it a bit more softer when it's a calmer water, or when it's big chunks of it and I don't want to see too much definition. But if I wanted to see rocks behind, then I want to see that spray. Probably later on might even spray some diluted white um, to show that continuous movement. Yeah. So I think I probably will come back with a little soft areas to soften some of that ruggedness. But I think I do prefer having that contrast left, not being over smoothed. I've got that. I love that Turner-esque roughness to it. Yeah,
Mm.
that three-dimensional almost relief to that. So
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Keith.
Can I,
Your style is quite Turner-esque, actually.
Yeah, one of my favorite artists, yes,
Mm.
Turner.
when we first saw you, Julia, at
Yeah,
Windsor Art Fair last year,
yeah,
you were demonstrating with both hands, and you were
with both
using
hands.
sponges in both hands, showing out an ambidextrous approach to this
Are you
painting.
sure?
Yes, I remember. We've got photographs of
You
it.
got photographs. Maybe I was just swapping one sponge from another and just maybe
Yeah,
I was wiping with one and painting with the other one.
yeah,
I'm
you were.
definitely right-handed. But I do. Also last year I had an operation on my hand, on my left hand. So maybe I was supporting something else with it there.
Possibly. Yeah, yeah. But
So
Maybe you
it was
had too
well
many
worth the
glasses of the
wait. Well worth the
complimentary
wait.
wine, Brian.
Sorry?
I said maybe you had too many glasses of the complimentary wine at the
No, we only had one
exhibition.
coffee, Keith. You were there with me.
but I think lifting things off with one sponge, having a clean sponge, yeah, and having a color on another one, yeah, I can see myself doing that. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
especially when I was working on probably not double the size. I think I had an A1 format
Yeah, it
board.
was slightly bigger.
Yeah, slightly bigger.
Work
Yeah.
it quicker. Yeah.
So, and I think I had about half an hour.
It was excellent. That's why we thought we would invite you back.
Excellent. Well, if
Oh,
you think of any other topics or any other subject, maybe watercolors with a sponge or any other things in the future, let me know.
We
And or
will.
maybe something topic you might consider later on.
mm.
That'd be great. But I'd love to see your work experimenting with your sponges.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, thanks very much
And
again.
let me turn my face on so I'm still here. Oops, wrong button. It's
Let me
not
just turn off
still
the